Hi all my dear students and welcome to the next session of Sri Jendra Rank Zone classes. I am your mentor Amit Ajmani, and in today's class we'll be taking up a new chapter, that is electricity. So let us start up with electricity, and before doing it let us understand a bit about charge. Now what is charge? Charge is a fundamental property of matter. We know that there are two types of charges. One are the positive charges and another one is the negative charge. What are these? The charge which is obtained by a glass rod when it is rubbed with a silk cloth is the positive charge, and negative charge is the charge obtained by ebonite rod when it is rubbed with woolen cloth. We know a few basic things about charges, that the like charges repel each other while the unlike charges attract each other. Another point is that electric charge is conserved, additive and quantized. One point you need to remember is that charge carried by a body does not depend upon velocity of the body, and the force between the charges can be attractive or repulsive according as the charges are opposite or similar charges, right? Now we know when we talk about the particles of an atom, protons carries positive charge, neutron is electrically neutral, and the electrons carry negative charge. The SI unit of charge is coulomb, which is denoted by capital C. The charge on a proton is a positive charge of 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, whereas an electron possesses a negative charge of 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. Now the amount or the magnitude of charge on an electron is called the fundamental charge, and its value is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, and it is denoted by small e. So these are a few basic things we need to relate regarding the charges. Now let's talk about the conservation of charge. The charge can neither be created nor destroyed, but it may simply be transferred from one body to another. This is the principle of conservation of charge, right? Now, quite important, you have studied about Coulomb's law. Let us relate the Coulomb's law. According to Coulomb's law, the force, whether it is a force of attraction or that of repulsion, the force between any 2 point charges is directly proportional to the product of the magnitude of charges, and it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So, we can sum up the above Coulomb's law by this particular representation or the formula, that force is directly proportional to Q1 into Q2 divided by R square. Here F is the force, whether it is the force of attraction or repulsion. Q1 and Q2 are the point charges, and R is the distance between these point charges. Now removing the proportionality, our formula becomes F is equal to K Q1 Q2 by R square. Here K is a constant which is called electrostatic force constant, and the value of K in SI unit is 9.0 into 10 to the power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square. Q1 and Q2 are the 2 point charges, and R is the distance between them. Now, one important thing we need to remember is that the force always acts along the line joining the two charges, right? So this is what Coulomb's law states. Next, we'll talk about electric potential. What is electric potential? Let us define it. The electric potential or potential at a point in an electric field is defined as the work done in moving a unit positive charge from infinity to that point. Now, the work done on the electric charge in the process of charging, it gets stored as potential energy of charges, and this potential energy per unit charge is called the electric potential. So we can say that electric potential is equal to electric potential energy divided by quantity of charge moved. We know that potential energy is equal to the work done, so we can also relate electric potential as work done upon quantity of charge moved, or V is equal to W upon Q, where V is the electric potential, W represents the work done, and Q represents the charge. So this is electric potential. Let's see what exactly is electrostatic potential. Now, the electrostatic potential difference, or simply potential difference, between 2 points in an electric circuit is defined as the amount of work done in moving a unit positive charge from one point to the other point. Or we can also relate that the difference in electric potential between 2 points is called the potential difference, and it is also called voltage. The SI unit of potential difference is volt, which is denoted by capital V, and this potential difference is also sometimes written as P dot D dot, the acronyms. Fine. Quite importantly, the potential difference between 2 points is said to be 1 volt if 1 joule of work is done in moving 1 coulomb of electric charge from one point to the other point. Right? This will be 1 volt of potential difference, because we have said that potential difference is equal to work done upon charge moved. The SI unit of potential difference is volt, work done is joule, and charge is coulomb. So 1 volt is the potential difference when 1 joule of work is done in moving 1 coulomb of charge from one point to another in an electric field. Right? Now this you need to relate and remember that the potential difference is measured by means of an instrument called voltmeter. The voltmeter is always connected in parallel across the 2 points where the potential difference is to be measured. You have already studied the chapter, and you know that series and parallel are the two types of combinations of resistances that we'll be studying in detail, right, in the same chapter. So we know what a parallel combination is, and a voltmeter is always connected in parallel across any 2 points. This is quite important. Another very important point is that a voltmeter always has a high resistance. Why so? It is so that it takes a negligible current from the circuit. So potential difference is measured through voltmeter. Voltmeter is always connected in parallel. Voltmeter always has a high resistance. These are the three things you need to relate and keep in mind. Fine. Now let's take up the next topic, which is electric current. Now what exactly is meant by electric current? Electric current is a rate of flow of electric charges or electrons in a conductor such as a metal wire. So the rate at which the charges are flowing in any conducting wire, that is called electric current. The magnitude of electric current in a conductor is the amount of electric charge passing through a given point of the conductor in 1 second. For example, if a charge of q coulombs flows through a conducting wire in time t seconds, then the magnitude of electric current I flowing through it is given by the formula I is equal to q upon t, where I is the current, q is the amount of charge flowing, and t is the time. Now when we call the amount of charge, it means how many electrons are flowing through, and we know that Q is also written as N into E, where N is the number of electrons and E is the charge on an electron, the fundamental charge. So I can also be calculated by the formula Ne upon T. Clear? We know that the SI unit of electric current is ampere, denoted by capital A, and 1 coulomb of charge when flows through any cross section of a conductor in 1 second, then the electric current flowing through it is said to be 1 ampere. That is, 1 ampere is equal to 1 coulomb by 1 second, because current I, we have said, is equal to Q upon T. So current 1 ampere, 1 coulomb will be the charge, and time will be 1 second. So if 1 coulomb of charge is flowing through a wire in 1 second, then we call the current to be 1 ampere. This ampere is the SI unit of current. Some smaller units are also used to measure current. The first one is milliampere, written as small m and capital A, right? And in 1 milliampere, this is equal to 1 by 1000 ampere, or 10 to the power minus 3 ampere. Another smaller unit of current used is microampere, and 1 microampere is equal to 10 to the power minus 6 amperes. We need to relate and remember that electric current is a scalar quantity, because it has just got magnitude, no particular direction, right? Now this current is measured by an instrument called ammeter. Some people call it ammeter, some call it ammeter. Whichever way you need to pronounce, it is double M that you are going to write in your exams. So current is measured by an instrument called ammeter. This ammeter is always connected in series with the circuit in which the current is to be measured. And because we want to measure the current and we want that the entire current passes through the ammeter, therefore an ammeter should always have very low, almost negligible resistance. Why so? It is so that it may not change the value of the current flowing in the circuit. So if you remember, just 5 minutes back, we have studied about another instrument, that was voltmeter. So if we compare a voltmeter with an ammeter, voltmeter is an instrument to measure potential difference, whereas ammeter is used to measure current. Voltmeter is always connected in parallel across the points, whereas ammeter is always connected in series in the circuit. A voltmeter needs to have a very high resistance so that no current should pass through it. Whereas for ammeter, we are saying that the condition is it should have negligible resistance so that the whole of the current passes through it. Clear? So these are some differences between voltmeter and ammeter that you should know. Clear? Next we'll talk about the conductors, resistors and insulators. What are these? Conductors. Let us start up with conductors first. Those substances which allow the current to pass through them, they are called conductors or good conductors. All such substances have very low electrical resistance so that they should not resist the flow of current and so that current should pass through them. All the metals like silver, copper, aluminium, they are all conductors. Carbon, which is a non-metal, but carbon in the form of graphite is also a good conductor of electricity. As far as our human body is concerned, it is also a very good conductor of electricity. Next type are the insulators. What are insulators? Those substances which do not allow electricity to pass through them. They are termed as insulators. Now all the insulators have very high electrical resistance and that is why they do not allow the current to pass through them. All the non-metals except graphite that we just discussed above, it is a form of carbon. Except graphite, all the non-metals, glass, ebonite, rubber, most of the plastics, paper, dry wood, mica, dry air, all are examples of insulators. Right? So one are conductors, another are insulators. Conductors will allow current to pass through them. Insulators won't allow the current to pass through them. There are certain substances which allow the current to pass through them but not fully. Such substances are called the resistors or the semiconductors. These are those substances which have comparatively high electrical resistance. They are called resistors. They do not allow the current to flow through them freely, nor do they restrict the flow of electrons completely. That is why they are in between conductors and insulators. For example, the alloys like nichrome, magnanin, it should be tin, constantin or eureka, they are all resistors, right? So these are the three types of substances: conductors, insulators and resistors. Conductors freely allow the current to pass through them. Insulators do not allow the current to pass through them at all. And resistors or semiconductors are in between. They allow partially, right? Now let's talk about the direction of electric current. Again, this is quite important. The conventional direction of electric current, you need to remember that the conventional direction of electric current is from positive terminal of a cell or battery to the negative terminal through the external circuit. This is the conventional direction of electric current. The actual flow of electrons, which actually constitute the current, is however opposite. It is from negative terminal to the positive terminal of a cell, which is opposite to the direction of the conventional current, right? So we have to use the conventional direction, that is from positive terminal to the negative terminal. Got it? So this is the direction of electric current. So now let's talk about electric circuits. Now what exactly is meant by an electric circuit? Electric circuit is a continuous conducting path consisting of wires and other resistances like electric bulbs, etc., and a switch between the two terminals of a cell or a battery along which an electric current flows. This is called a circuit. When in a diagram we indicate how different components in a circuit have been connected by using the electrical symbols for the components, such a diagram is called a circuit diagram. Just trying to have an example of a circuit diagram. This is a circuit diagram. In this, we can see that this is a cell having the positive and the negative terminal. This is a connecting wire represented by a straight line, right? We are showing the direction of current with the help of arrows. This is an ammeter which is connected in this circuit in series. Then we have a resistance R, and with this resistor a voltmeter is connected in parallel. Then we have connected the wire and there is a switch in which there is a dot in between showing that this is a closed switch. So this is a diagram which represents the flow of current, and we have shown this circuit in the form of electrical symbols. Such a diagram is called a circuit diagram. Clear? Now let's come to one of the most important things in this chapter, and that is Ohm's law. You have to learn Ohm's law by heart. What exactly is Ohm's law? Let us try to understand. According to Ohm's law, the current flowing through a conductor is directly proportional to the potential difference across the ends of the conductor, provided the physical conditions such as temperature, mechanical strain, etc. are kept constant. Let us try to understand it in a bit of depth, that if I be the current flowing through a conductor and V be the potential difference or the voltage across its ends, then according to Ohm's law, I, that is current, is directly proportional to V, that is voltage, temperature being constant. Now we can also write this as V directly proportional to I, or we can write V is equal to R into I, where this R is a proportionality constant and this R is called the resistance of the conductor. So we can conclude the Ohm's law by the formula V is equal to IR. This equation can also be written as R is equal to V upon I or I is equal to V upon R. And in these formulas, V relates to the potential difference whose SI units is volts. I represents the current whose SI unit is ampere, and R is the resistance. This is a constant. So this is our Ohm's law, right? Now when we relate this relation V is equal to IR from this Ohm's law, we can quite obviously relate that the current is directly proportional to the potential difference. But the current is inversely proportional to resistance. These are the two things that we may conclude looking at the equation of Ohm's law. Now please try to understand these 2 points, that since current is directly proportional to potential difference which is applied across the ends of a conductor, therefore if the potential difference across the ends of a conductor is doubled, the current which is flowing through it also gets doubled. And if the potential difference is halved, the current also gets halved, being in direct proportion. But when we try to relate it in the case of resistance, it is opposite. How? Let us see. We know that the current is inversely proportional to resistance. So, if the resistance is doubled, the opposite, the inverse impact will be seen in current, that is, the current gets halved. And vice versa, if the resistance is halved, the current gets doubled. Clear? Now we need to study the resistance of a conductor in a bit of detail. We have seen above in Ohm's law that resistance is a constant. But what exactly is a resistance? Let us try to comprehend the property of a conductor due to which it opposes the flow of current through it is called its resistance. So resistance is the opposing force. Resistance is the property of any substance by virtue of which it opposes the flow of current. It can also be defined as the ratio of the potential difference V across to the current I flowing through it. This is by Ohm's law that we related R is equal to V upon I, where R represents resistance, V represents potential difference, and I represents current. Now we know that the SI unit of potential difference is volts, and the SI unit of current is amperes, and the SI unit of resistance is ohm, which is also denoted by the symbol omega. Right? If we try to relate what exactly is the definition of 1 ohm, we can define 1 ohm as the resistance of a conductor such that when a potential difference of 1 volt is applied to its ends, a current of 1 ampere flows through it. 1 ohm is equal to 1 volt upon 1 ampere. The bigger unit of ohm is kilo ohm, and obviously in 1 kilo ohm there will be 10 to the power 3 ohms or 1000 ohms. Right? So this is the resistance. Now we have seen in Ohm's law that the current and potential difference are directly proportional to each other. So if a graph is drawn between the potential difference readings, that is V, taken in the voltmeter, and the corresponding current values I, which is measured by an ammeter, then the graph is found to be a straight line passing through the origin, due to which we conclude that current is directly proportional to the potential difference. So this is the graph that we have drawn between I current and V potential difference, and it is a straight line passing through the origin. So this straight line on the graph between V and I confirms Ohm's law and confirms the conclusion that potential difference and current are directly proportional to each other. Got it? Now we talked about the constant resistance. Let us try to understand the various factors that affect the resistance of a conductor. This electrical resistance depends on these four factors. What are these? Length of the conductor. Second factor is area of cross section of the conductor or the thickness of the conductor. Third is the nature of the material of the conductor and temperature of the conductor. These are the four factors on which the resistance of a conductor depends. Now let us try to get into the detail as to how resistance depends on these. First one is effect of length of the conductor. Now the resistance of a conductor is directly proportional to its length. We can say R is directly proportional to L, where R is the resistance and L is the length of the conductor. Now based on this relation, when the length of a wire is doubled, we can very well relate that the resistance will also get doubled. Why? Because resistance in A is in direct proportion to length. And if we do the opposite, that is, if the length of a wire is halved, then its resistance also gets halved. What do we conclude from this? We conclude that a long wire or a long conductor has more resistance, and a short wire has less resistance. Got it? So this is the first factor on which resistance of a conductor depend. Let us see the second factor. The second factor is effect of area of cross section of the conductor. Now, the resistance of a conductor is inversely proportional to the area of cross section. That is, R is inversely proportional to 1 by A, where R is the resistance and A is the area of cross section of the conductor. Quite importantly, please try to relate these points. They are very important. How come? Let us see one by one. With the above relation, we conclude that when the area of cross section of a wire is doubled, since the resistance is inversely proportional to the area of cross section, therefore its resistance gets halved. And if the area of cross section of the wire is halved, then its resistance will get doubled. What does we conclude? What do we conclude? We conclude that a thick wire has a greater area of cross section. We know that. And a thin wire has a smaller area of cross section. So the above point gives the conclusion that a thick wire will have less resistance, while a thin wire will have more resistance. Now, if we relate the first and the second point, the length and area of cross section, so we may combine these two and we may draw the conclusion that short length of a thick wire is used for getting low resistance and long length of a thin wire is used for getting high resistance. If we need to have low resistance, we need to have a thick wire and it should be of shorter length. Whereas if we want to get high resistance, then we need to take a long wire and a thin wire. Got it? Now we know that the thickness of a wire is usually represented by its diameter, because the wires are circular wires. The electric wires that we are talking about are circular wires. Now we can show it through calculations that the resistance of a wire is inversely proportional to the square of its diameter. Quite important. I repeat it once again that the resistance of a wire is inversely proportional to the square of its diameter. Therefore, when the diameter of a wire is doubled, that is, if it is made 2 times, its resistance will become 1/4. And if the diameter of the wire is halved, that is made 1 by 2, then its resistance becomes 4 times. In the same way, if the diameter of a wire is tripled, made 3 times, then its resistance will become 1 by square of 3, that means 1 by 9th of its original value. So this is quite important to relate and remember that the resistance of a wire is inversely proportional to the square of its diameter. Got it? So this was the second factor on which the resistance of a wire depends. Let's see the third factor on which the resistance of a conductor depends. The third factor is effect of the nature of material of the conductor. How does it depend? The electrical resistance of a conductor depends on the nature of the material of which that conductor is made. Some materials have low resistances, whereas others have high resistances. How? Let us see. For example, if we take two similar wires having equal lengths and equal diameters. Now the length is equal, diameter is same, but the wires are of different material. Like one is copper, which is a metal, and another is nichrome, which is an alloy. We find that the resistance of nichrome wire is about 60 times more than that of the copper wire. And it is seen that all the metals, they are having less resistance, and the non-metals, they all have a very high resistance. That is the main reason that metals allow electrical current to pass through them, because they have got a very low resistance. Whereas the non-metals, because they have such a high resistance, they will oppose the flow of current, and hence they do not allow the current to pass through them. Right? So this is the third factor. Let us see one more factor which affects the resistance of a wire. That is temperature. Resistance of all pure metals increases on raising the temperature and decreases on lowering the temperature. But quite importantly, you need to relate that the resistance of alloys like manganese or constantan and nichrome, it is almost unaffected by temperature. So if we are talking about pure metals, then in pure metals, resistance is directly proportional to temperature. As the temperature will increase, the resistance will also increase, and on decreasing the temperature, the resistance also decreases. So these are the four factors affecting resistance of a conductor. Clear? We'll be taking up the topic till here only in today's class. But before ending up this class, I want you people to just go through whatever we have studied till now in today's class, just a brush up, a review, because there are quite many important points that you need to understand, you need to relate, and you need to learn. Let me highlight the important points. First thing is, charge is the fundamental property of matter. Two types, positive and negative charge. We know like charges repel each other, unlike charges attract each other. Electric charge is conserved, additive, and quantized. Charge does not depend on velocity of the body. Then the charge on a proton is positive charge of 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, and the charge on electron is a negative charge of 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. SI unit of charge is coulomb. Charge on electron is called fundamental charge, denoted by small e. Conservation of charge, just to read, charges can neither be created nor be destroyed, only can be converted from one body to another. Coulomb's law, it states that force of attraction or repulsion is directly proportional to the product of the point charges and is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the charges. And this force always acts along the line joining the two charges, right? Then we talked about electric potential, that is work done upon charge moved. We need to relate this formula only. Then we saw the electrostatic potential, which is also known as voltage. It is expressed in volts, right? And the potential difference between 2 points will be 1 volt if 1 joule of work is done in moving 1 coulomb of electric charge from one point to the other. Got it? Next, potential difference measured by an instrument called voltmeter. This voltmeter always is connected in parallel across the points, and this voltmeter should have high resistance. Next, we talked about electric current, the flow of charges. We need to relate that current is equal to charge upon time or NE upon time. SI unit of current is ampere, right? And 1 ampere is equal to 1 coulomb by 1 second. Smaller units, milliampere and microampere. 1 milliampere is equal to 10 to the power minus 3 amperes, and 1 microampere is equal to 10 to the power minus 6 amperes. Current is a scalar quantity. This current is measured by an instrument called ammeter. This ammeter is always connected in series and it should have very low resistance. Then we studied about conductors, those substances which allow the current to pass through them. Normally the metals, and all the conductors have low resistance. Insulators, the substances which do not allow the current to pass through them. Normally all the non-metals except graphite, which is a form of carbon, and they have very high electrical resistance. Resistors or semiconductors are the intermediates between the conductors and the insulators. They allow partial flow of current passing through them. Alloys like nichrome, constantan and manganese, these are resistors. Clear? Next, direction of electric current. Conventionally, we take it from positive terminal to the negative terminal. The flow of electrons in actual is from negative to positive. So the flow of electrons and the conventional flow of direction of electric current are opposite to each other. Then we saw what is a circuit. It is a conducting path, and if this path of current is represented in the form of electrical symbols, then it is called a circuit diagram. Quite importantly, Ohm's law, which states that the current flowing through a conducting wire is directly proportional to the potential difference across its ends, provided the constant temperature is there. And from here we deduced V is equal to IR, where V is the potential difference, SI unit is volts, I is the current, SI unit is amperes, and R is the resistance. SI unit is ohm represented by omega. This R is a proportionality constant, right? From this we related that potential difference and current are directly proportional, but the current and the resistance are inversely proportional to each other. Clear? Talking a bit more about resistance. Resistance unit is ohm, symbol is omega. 1 ohm is equal to 1 volt by 1 ampere, right? This is what we need to remember. Then VI graph, always a straight line. This verifies Ohm's law. And next we studied about the factors affecting the resistance of a conductor. Four factors: length of the conductor, area of cross section or thickness, nature of material, and temperature. Resistance is directly proportional to length of the conductor. So a long wire has more resistance, short wire has less resistance. Talking about the next, area of cross section, resistance is inversely proportional to area of cross section. That means a thick wire has less resistance and a thin wire has more resistance. Nature of material, the conductors, that is the metals, have low resistance. The resistors or the semiconductors have high resistance, and the insulators, that is the non-conductors or the non-metals, except carbon in the form of graphite, they are all non-conductors or insulators. They have a very high resistance. Next is the temperature. Resistance is directly proportional to temperature of the conductor, but in the case of metals only. You need to remember that in case of alloys like nichrome and constantan and manganese, the temperature, it does not affect much the resistance. So the resistance remains unaffected in case of alloys. Right? So this is all that we studied till now about the chapter electricity. The chapter is still not over. Still lot many things left that we'll be taking up in the next class. But before that, I want you people to go through whatever you have studied in today's class and learn them side by side. Quite many things you have learned, and out of these, lot many things are going to be utilized in the topics that we are going to do in the next class. Fine. So be prepared by learning all these things for the next class. We'll meet you there in the next class. Till then, take care of yourself and have a great time. Thank you so much for being with me. We'll meet soon with the remaining chapter, electricity. Goodbye for the timing, everyone.